Have you ever heard the phrase, the rich get richer? In today's video, we got a perfect example of that. If you're an Alabama fan, you're going to be happy to hear this. However, if you're not an Alabama fan and you're an Alabama hater, you might want to click off now because I got some bad news for you. You hear it from time to time, whether you're watching ESPN, talking to your friends, or I've said it too. What Nick Saban's doing, it almost seems unfair. And what makes it even more that much frustrating is number one, it's fair and it's not illegal what he's doing. And number two, when you think, okay, year after year, Alabama continues to be a top 4 and 5 team, you're thinking, hey, maybe next year they won't be so good, and well, they will be. The Alabama fatigue is a real thing. Here's what we knew before all this news. Number one, Bryce Young and Will Anderson were coming back, so we knew Alabama was going to have a decent defense and once again a great quarterback. But however, with that being said, what has happened in the past week has already made Alabama 10 times scarier. I don't throw that term out there lightly, and I can't remember the last time I've even used the word scary on this channel. I want to make this very clear. This most recent Alabama team that got to the championship, I didn't think they was that great, and I thought Georgia by far was the better team. When I watched this Bama team play all throughout the season, there was nothing whatsoever that scared me. They was good, don't get me wrong. They just didn't have that fear factor that Alabama teams normally have. No team was scared of them this year, and I believe we saw that on the field. That's why the games against LSU, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Auburn, and a couple more were really close. The teams that were playing Alabama close, it wasn't a coincidence. They legitimately thought they had a good case to win the game and beat Alabama from the start. The difference is, in the years prior, most teams were already beat mentally before they stepped onto the field. I think that was the main difference in this Alabama team, and they were still good, but just not up there with some of the others I've seen in the past. But with the things that have been going on and happening in the past week, like I said, I'm telling you right now, it's going to take this Alabama team to a whole nother level. If you thought the 2021 Alabama team was good, oh man, in 2022, you're in for a treat. Okay, let me rephrase that. If you're an Alabama fan, you're in for a treat. If you're not an Alabama fan, you're in for a nightmare. I've done enough chitter chatter. Without further ado, let's get into it. Oh yeah guys, real quick, before we get into this video, I'm feeling good. I hope you're feeling good as well. We haven't double uploaded in a while, so if we can get this video to, I'm going to challenge you, 400 likes in 1 hour. That is a hefty like goal. Let's see if we can do it. 400 likes in 1 hour and we'll double upload. Yeah, pretty simple. Drop a like for the double upload if you want to see it. I got a very interesting video tonight. As always, if you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you join our family. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, do a nice stuff. And now without further ado, let's really get into it. There's many different places I could start with this video, but I'm going to start right here because I believe it's the most important. Normally with Alabama teams, what do we see? After the championship game or the season's over, all their defensive stars and offensive stars go to the NFL, and normally in the first round we see 6 guys go. It seems like a rare thing, but for Bama it's kind of normal. It also seems like every single draft, 11 to 12 Alabama players get selected. That's great for the players. They're getting their hard-earned money they worked for, and they're doing what's best for them. You can't knock them. However, it leaves Alabama's football team in not a big problem, but a slight problem. You got to find a way to replace them and not skip a beat. The standard at Alabama is a little different. For most teams, if you win a championship, the fans would be content for maybe 2 or 3 years. At Alabama, the fans aren't content whatsoever, and neither is Nick Saban. I can say without a doubt in my mind, Alabama is the only football team that is expected to go 14-0, 15-0, 16-0, whatever you want to call it, every single season. That's not me making up something. That's the standard, and it is what it is. Whenever Nick Saban retires, the standard will change, but that's a different story for a different day. But going into next year, things are going to look slightly different. Instead of Alabama having maybe 2 or 3 starters come back, on the defensive side of the ball, they're having 9 out of 11 starters coming back. The star linebacker Henry To'oTo'o is coming back. Jordan Battle, who's a star defensive back. Many thought he could be a 2nd round or 3rd round pick. DeMarco Hellams, defensive back, is coming back. And also DJ Dale. And last but not least, Byron Young. Let me repeat it once again so you can understand it. 9 out of 11 starters are returning for next year. If you don't keep up with Alabama football, you may be sitting there thinking, that's not too big of a deal. But I'm telling you, for Alabama, That hasn't happened in a long time. The linebacker Henry To'oTo'o is arguably better than Christian Harris, who declared for the draft. So he could have easily been a second or third round pick too, and maybe a first rounder. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say a lot of the guys returning are passing up on millions of dollars. Why are they coming back? I think there's two reasons for it. Number one, they want to improve their draft stock. That way they can get many more millions of dollars. But number two, I think it's the most important if you had to ask me, they want revenge. It's almost the same exact scenario from last year with Georgia. A lot of those guys that could have went to the NFL draft and been millionaires decided to come back so they could win a championship, and it happened. As bad as Alabama's defense was throughout this entire season, especially at the beginning and midway point, the last 4 and 5, 6 games, they were arguably a top 10 defense. That's kind of crazy to say, and it's hard for me to believe myself, but when I went back and watched the film, I believe it. The defense was solid against LSU and Auburn, and I know some of you are going to say, oh, well, Auburn had a backup quarterback who was hurt. Still, no excuses. If you want to make that argument, we can go even farther. Against Georgia, they held Georgia to low-scoring games both times they played them. The defense didn't even give up over 30 points in both games against Georgia, except for the pick 6, and that's why they got over 30 because of Bryce Young. I'm not going to bore you and talk about every single game and why the defense was good the later it got in the season. You get the point. We're not here to talk about the past. It doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you about the future and why you should be scared. This was one of, if not Nick Saban's youngest team. I haven't really checked the stats, but I know it's one of the youngest teams. And the defense was also relatively young. Will Anderson was a flat-out monster, and some people don't even realize he was only a sophomore. He couldn't have went to the draft if he wanted to. And I haven't even talked about him, but Will Anderson was the best player in the country last year in college football. I don't care that Bryce Young won the Heisman. Will Anderson's the best player in the country, no questions asked. And he's returning. I'm going to tell you right now, he's not going to get worse. He's only going to get bigger, stronger, and faster. Will Anderson alone can make an average defense look good and great, and I believe he's the main factor. Alabama's defense looked as good as they did at times. You take Will Anderson off of that defense, they're below average. Let me get back on topic like I was saying. As the year continued to go on, the defense got better. Why is that? Because they were getting more reps. All these guys on the field, they're 4 and 5 star recruits. They have plenty of talent. You can have all the talent in the world, but you got to have experience and get a ton of reps so you can reach your full potential. And with this Alabama defense, not the offense, the defense, they're going to reach their full potential. And they can maybe be a top 3 or 4 defense, maybe top 2, maybe top 1. Before we go any farther, I want to bring this up before I forget. Before the SEC championship game, before the national championship game, all year long, I said Georgia had the best defense in the country, and it wasn't even close. I don't care that Bryce Young put up 41 on them. He had a great performance and had great receivers. They still had a great defense. One bad game doesn't take away from 13 good ones. Vice versa, one good game doesn't take away from 13 bad ones. I gotta be honest and tell you the truth. I flat out thought this Georgia team was scary, only solely for their defense. I wasn't scared about their offense whatsoever, but their defense was that good that they could single-handedly win games if they have an average quarterback. I know what you're sitting there thinking, yo Matt, what in the heck does that have to do with Alabama? Well, the way things are looking, Alabama's defense is gonna be on that same category as Georgia's next year. But the difference is, and I think you know where I'm going with this, Alabama has a great offense too and the best quarterback in the country. So not only is their defense going to be scary and you're going to have trouble scoring over 30 points on them, you got to find a way to stop their offense, which nobody could do all throughout this season except for Georgia in the championship and Auburn. That right there leads me into my next point perfectly. Let's talk about the offense. Yes, they lose their top 3 receivers, Jamison Williams, John Mechie, and Slade Bolden. I'm not too worried about that. Alabama has 4 and 5 star recruit wide receivers. They're going to get more reps in spring practice, and eventually they're going to be first rounders as well. Some of you may think this is controversial. I don't think so whatsoever. I believe their offense next year is going to get better. I don't just say stuff on this channel. I always have facts and evidence to back it up, and that's what I'm going to do. There's a running back that nobody's really talking about that I think is going to be one of the best running backs in the country next year, and he goes by the name of Jameer Gibbs. A lot of you don't know, or maybe have never heard of Jameer Gibbs. I'm going to guarantee you one thing, and I promise you, he's going to be a household name next year. He was a running back for Georgia Tech who was a monster and put up great stats, and he's a great running back. but nobody talked about him because Georgia Tech was terrible. He recently entered the transfer portal, and what do you know, he went to Alabama. If you're wondering what he plays like and what you should look for, he reminds me a lot of Alvin Kamara, who plays for the Saints. Jameer Gibbs is fast and explosive, and he's a breakaway running back that Alabama didn't have throughout this season. I love Brian Robinson to death. He's a great role model, but he's not even a top 10 running back that Alabama's had in the past 15 seasons. Jameer Gibbs just adds another factor and another weapon for Bryce Young that he didn't even need. And the final thing I want to talk about with the offense is the offensive line. The offensive line was kind of like the defense throughout the year. You never knew what to expect out of them. The offensive line was either going to give up 6 or 7 sacks or 0 sacks. It was just a coin toss. The offensive line is losing Evan Neal, and of course, you never want to lose a top 5 NFL draft selection, but all in all, I think they was rather young and not so good. I'd expect them to be better next year. We all saw what Bryce Young can do when he has time. He can light you up. I'm not even going to talk about Bryce. He's great, and you guys know that. There's one more person that Alabama has added to their team for next year, and no, it's not a player, it's a coach. The coach is Travaris Robinson, and he was the DB coach for Miami, and he's leaving Miami for this same exact position in Alabama. I don't really get too excited about defensive back, defensive coordinator, or offensive coordinator hires, but this one is major. Robinson is one of the best in the business, and he's coached up some of the best cornerbacks that are currently in the NFL. This guy is great at what he does, and anytime Nick Saban recruits you for the same position you're already at, you know he's good. This hire also tells you a little bit about the state of Miami football. It's just terrible. When a defensive back coach leaves not to take a head coaching job, a defensive coordinator job, but another defensive back coaching job at a different school, it's a problem. Miami is simply not what it used to be. It's just not the U anymore. It's honestly sad, and I don't know if we'll ever see Miami return to their glory days. I couldn't even list off and name all the great players Travaris has coached up and got to the NFL because I'd be talking for over 30 minutes. The guy's simply good at what he does, and I'm going to leave it at that. Major pickup for Alabama. They also picked up Coleman Hutzler, who is going to be the special teams coach. I just don't think it's a big deal. All in all, just look at what Alabama's done in the past couple of weeks. They got a new, and I'd say improved, defensive back coach. Their defense is going to be on another level, and you got Bryce Young coming back. I could go on, but we covered most of the stuff I wanted to touch on in today's video. Let me know your thoughts down below. 400 likes will double upload, but all that being said, it's going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. If you're new to the channel, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, do a nice stuff, and I'm out. Peace.